Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's class. We are going to be talking about taking our Copperplate to the next level. And you'll see here an example here of just kind of the basic forms that we've been studying before, the basic capitals, the basic structure of the letters. Sorry, it's so tiny here on the screen. And then today we're going to talk about just adding some of these strokes that, yes, make it have a little bit more personality, but also, like, why do we embellish words? Sometimes it adds to that layer of communication. You want it to feel really airy, or you want it to feel over the top and just super luxurious. So depending on what look you're going for, may determine how much we're going to embellish something. This last example on the page here, I purposely went what I consider to be overboard. But just to show you that you really can, if you have, a header on the top of a page, and you just really want to just add all the things, there are a few rules and guiding principles that we can put into play to make sure that we are doing things elegantly and so that it looks really nice and pleasing to the eye. When we look at how we connect letters, basically we have talked about entry strokes and exit strokes. And it's these entry and exit strokes that are going to connect with one another. So this A has this exit stroke, the W has this entrance stroke. The way that we connect letters with Copperplate is that the exit stroke of one letter becomes the entrance stroke of the next. So in this case, it's a pretty easy connection between the A and the W because they're both, undercurved, starting from the baseline, this line down here, and curving up. So you could see relatively easily how this line would be this line. You would just leave this one out and then continue with the next stroke. And I will show you some examples here. It gets a little trickier, however, when some letters have exit strokes that are smaller and they're up here at what would be the waistline up here. I call that the upper exit stroke. Or sometimes instead of starting the entrance stroke isn't an undercurve like this, it's an overturn. It has a turned top to it. So when we are connecting a stroke like this, an upper exit stroke, that somehow needs to turn into an overturn, it gets a little bit tricky. So I wanted to show you just a few examples here so that you can, have this as a reference point for you. So I'm going to run through this relatively quickly because there's always so much I want to go through. But this first example, let me show you. I'm going to pull out a few different ink colors here so you can see how these letters are connecting. So I'm going to do it large so you can really see it. Let's see this first letter M is an overturn, compound curve. So this exit stroke is going to be this first stroke of the I. Okay, so we're going to get rid of that. And the next stroke, underturn for the I. And this exit stroke of the I becomes this first stroke of the T. Let's look at the connection here with between the U and the M. We are basically going to think about splicing those two strokes together. So we're going to have this exit stroke from the U that's going to then get spliced together into the overturn of the M there. So let's do this again. M again for the mum. If you're from England somewhere, they like to say mum, I think. I could be wrong. At least where I live, that's what they would say. And then we've got the, we're going to ignore that first entry stroke of the U, same as what we did above. But now here is on the exit stroke of the U, I'm going to think about the next stroke, the overturn of the M. So we're going to splice those two together to get that lovely connection. Then let's look at what about when we've got this upper exit stroke here for in the word week. Actually, I'm going to skip the word week here. I'm going to go straight down to the word boy for time's sake, but I've got two letters in a row that have this upper exit stroke. So once again, the exit stroke from the B is going to become the entrance stroke to the O. So I'm going to get rid of this guy. And then we've got this exit stroke from the O that's going to become the entrance stroke for the Y, which is an overturn. So here's another one where we're going to kind of splice. This is going to go up and then over into that overturn. So let me do that large for you to see here. We've got a nice large ascender loop. Here's our upper exit stroke from the B that is going to become the entrance stroke for our O. The exit stroke of the O is going to come out, and then I'm going to think, okay, it's got to splice together with that overturn of the Y, like so. Okay, so let's take a moment here to look at some guiding principles, what to do and what not to do. All right, so here's a good example of what to do. Here's what not to do. Sorry, I'm going above the lines there. What makes this less appealing? Both of them are kind of this figure 8 stroke. Let me show you. So the principle that is at play here is how we cross strokes. What is nice about this stroke, and it's not a perfect 90 degrees here, but in general, the principle that we want to keep in mind is that we are aiming for a 90-degree connection. Oops. Okay, or when we cross our stroke. So this one, I've compressed it. It's like someone took this nice stroke and then went, smushed it on the sides. So it makes it less elegant, right? We've got these smushed strokes there, not proportion. Mauricia is saying correct. You don't want to have two thick lines cross one another. If you see an example here, I've got this thin line crossing the thick line. Here we've got two thick lines crossing. So principle number 2 is that thick doesn't cross thick. Okay. Now on to our next example. What not to do. We've got this option here. And if I go something like, let's see here, what can we do? Sorry, my head's getting in the way there. In addition to trying to make it look a little yucky, but there's a couple particularly bad errors. The one is going to go back to that sometimes less is more, right? Meaning that this would have been more elegant had I just stopped here, maybe. But number 2, see where I've crossed back through here at this point? You don't want to cross at the same place twice. Same place. You guys are seeing my true everyday handwriting. So even calligraphers don't have, the most amazing everyday handwriting. So try not, when you're crossing, especially when you're doing lots of these loops. Last example here, let's go with this S. I'll try to make it a little bit less obviously ugly. It is still obviously ugly, but what I've done here, I haven't crossed the same place twice. I have mostly 90-degree crossing points, but what I have going on here is I have lost the concept of the oval, right? I just kind of was swiggling around. When we are doing our strokes, as we learned today, we're going to be thinking oval, 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 oval. If you haven't heard the word oval enough in this 3-part series, you probably had the sound off. So here you can see this oval shape in here. It turns into an oval shape in here. We've got this oval here. So overall, we're really keeping oval shapes. Now we've got like circle going on over here. This was just weaving all around. There's no real connected relationship between the different strokes. The pen was just leading me wherever it wanted to go. So 1, we want to keep the ovals in mind. 2, spacing. So when we think about like, hey, where do I place the ovals? Let's zoom back in here. When I did this initial one, I kind of came out, did a nice big oval. But when I wanted to turn back in here, I actually kind of bisected that line in half. So I thought about where I came through here. And then where I placed this oval is kind of in between, let me get some other colors in here. This space in here, it's centered within this larger oval. Okay. And again, when I come back through this line, it's not perfectly centered there, but it would have looked different if I came out here to the side there. It wouldn't have been as elegant. So I'm coming back around, about bisecting that lower line. So we're thinking about balance, overall placement of those strokes. Whereas again, this one just looks like it's going all over the place. So we're thinking about spacing. And then a number 3 is, calligraphers like to use the term spaghetti. We don't like spaghetti when it comes to our flourishes. So to avoid this random plate of mixed flourishes. All right. So we will talk about capitals. So that's usually the beginning of a word. We could flourish. in the middle of a word or in the beginning of the word, we've got ascenders, right? So I purposely named my children, all of my children have names with ascenders in them because I could write their name beautifully if it had an ascender in it. So some really common places that we can do that. Here's all of our letters with some ascenders in it. And while I've given the demonstration with an H here, it would apply to any of these. So you could do these same strokes with the B, K, L, and so on, okay? Other than the T and the D are in their own little category. All right, so an easy one to do is this loop here, right? So if the traditional form would be that entry stroke plus the upper ascender loop, what we're doing here is we're just taking that ascender loop and coming out with a nice, still oval shaped form, which can tuck in here if you like, before doing the rest of the stroke. Just a stick figure form of kind of leave that upper portion not flourished, and then I can come through. So this part would have been done in the downward motion. Then I will come through and I will add that stroke later. Okay, you'll notice that where I crossed the line here was where I connected those strokes, so it kind of covers a little bit of the that connection point if it wasn't perfectly made. So that is a little tip that you can keep in mind, which might be helpful. Then we've got this stroke here. Same idea. Let's go ahead and just do that basic kind of the stick figure form of the letter. And right now, because I'm demonstrating with a monoline nib, I haven't been adding in the thickening strokes there. For this next flourish, it comes over, tucks in, and has a graceful curve out. So this is kind of that S curve stroke. Then we can just go with a larger entry loop. This is really nice at the beginning of a word, like if you were going to write happy birthday. So that's an option there. We have the other option here where it looks a little bit more complex, but let's do this with a B. And this is one that I would almost always do as a two-part stroke. So I would do this portion, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go down, up, down, and then tuck it back in. So here we go. Making that loop. We're going down, up, down, tucking it back in. Okay. With the letter T, a fun way to add that little extra song and dance, if you will, is just how we cross the T's. It can start an upward motion, up, or you can start down first, down, up, down. If you've got two T's in a row, those can be crossed together. Sometimes I even start from the right and go the other way. So there's different options to play with there. So for the double T. So a descender is going to be any of the letters that descend below our baseline. So here's our X height. This is our baseline. So any of the letters that have strokes that go down there are our descenders. Okay, so simple one to do. If our regular G comes in, this would be our descender loop that we practiced in part 1. We're going to do the basics of that descender stroke as if we were going to come to the top, and then we change our mind and we come out to the side. I do this a lot. I think it's very pretty, very elegant, and it's one of those less is more beautiful strokes. If you want to go a little bit further than that, you can take that stroke and do an oval out to the side here, and kind of like that last stroke, it comes around. Now, for space sake, I fit it in here. But in theory, this could go quite a bit of ways out here, and you could really pull this stroke if you had a G that you wanted to have it embellish underneath the entire word. One thing to keep in mind, especially with this flourish, is this could be one of those places where it'd be really easy to cross in the same place twice. So I had to be careful to drop this stroke down a little bit so it wasn't crossing right there. Okay. Again, this was basically off of that same descender stroke, but sometimes we can swoop it out to the side, kind of give it that pelican mouth, that pelican beak line where it comes out, and then we're just thinking about that big figure 8, oval, and an oval, and tucking it. Or we'll talk about flourishing at the end of a word here shortly, but another place we can do is similar to that basic descender loop, and now we're going to come out and just bounce it to the side. We could do this with other letters, but I'm going to show you P in particular. We could take our regular form of the P is like this. It stops at that first descender line. And it would look like so. If we took that line and we stretched it out and turned it into this compound curve, that S stroke, you could have something like that. Or you could continue that around and loop it like so. And this would be another scenario where if you've got two letters, like in the word happy birthday, you don't need to flourish both of them. You might just leave one as is and the other one flourished. You also notice that I broke the rule of how long my flourish was. If this was my second descender line, usually that would be like where a G, something like that would end. It would stop there. With flourishing, you have permission to break more of the rules. So you could go, really big down there. In fact, if you look at this example here, this is for the ascender for the L. I went really, really big into that space there. Same with this F. I went really, really far down. So you can play with your spacing there, as long as you keep in mind if you're going to have another line of text below it that you don't, crash into that space and it causes problems for you. Okay, so let's keep going. I'm quick and special note regarding the Q. Legibility is very, very important for us. So with our Q, if you're going to get flourishy with it, make sure that that stroke always goes to the right. If you come down here and go to the left, it's going to get confused for a G. So I like this example here. You're going to do that oval. You can come down and pretend like you're going to turn to the left and then say, just kidding, and give it a nice oval there. I find that one's really, really elegant. Another option for you would be, if you want it to be a little bit fancier, let's say you're going to write the word quill, it can come down, cross over, something like that. A little bit tight for me, but it's an option for you as well. Another note with the F, because an F is both technically an ascender and a descender, I usually choose, if I'm going to flourish the F, to flourish either the ascender portion or the descender and not both. So let's give you, let's see, if I were going to flourish the ascender portion, maybe I would come like that, breast, normal, or I would do the top portion as I typically would, and maybe the bottom would get to have the fun. All right, let's talk about now if we want to flourish at the end of a word, what are some options for really making it beautiful and elegant and wispy and still having all the grace that Copperplate has, but where we could add that to the end of a word. The way that I have these categorized is if I want the embellishment to go kind of in that upper space above a word at the end, here's three options. If I want it to go below the word, if let's say I've got a lot going on the top of the word, here's some options for embellishing below, and here's some options for out to the side. So for above, we've got our beautiful bounce. Here, you'll see how I kind of scoop below. That's to give me more space. If my exit line was here, like it typically would be for an E, I would have a pretty tight connection. So feel free, if let's say it was the letter C, you can scoop out and below to do that stroke. Okay, so again, we do break some rules with Copperplate, not very many, but occasionally we do this. Okay, I've written all over my next example here. This is one of the few cases, this second example in here is one of the few cases where I don't always tuck in this flourish stroke. You'll see here it comes out and it does this beautiful stroke and it tucks back in. This example here, I talked through it briefly, but the idea is that we're doing big open oval, kind of that figure eight down, up and around. And again, we're thinking about those 90-degree connections, sort of. And then that I'm balancing that in the middle of where I'm placing that stroke. Down below a word, a little option here, just a little micro horizontal oval. Kind of cute. Okay, that's relatively small when it comes from my flourishing. Same idea, coming down, doing that loop, but here we're turning it into that S curve. So it's going down and then back up again to another oval and tucking it in. Again, we're thinking 90 degrees. This was a little bit tighter. I could have opened that one up a little bit to get a better 90 degrees there. But this one would be like I was going to do that horizontal oval, but I'm adding in, just to break my own rule, a small, tiny little oval right there that allows me kind of to change the direction to go down and up. So you'll notice I have this as a horizontal oval and this one is a little bit more on a slant. And now if we want to embellish at the end of a word, like again with the word happy, I needed to fill in that space. We've got this option here. It says great for a descender. It comes down, nice big open oval. Or we've got this loop that's center. So again, it's normal descender loop coming out. So you're going to loop right in the middle, almost like right in that X height space, right? And then we're going to come up and around. So I know it's not perfectly spaced between here and here, but it feels balanced, okay? And it's nice and big and open. Any of our capitals, so again, going back to part 2 in our class, we talked about the letters that had that S curve in them. So all of these letters here have an S curve stroke in them, either one that starts in a downward motion like this. So it would have that added weight in there, that thickness. So examples would be P, B, and R, for example, or some of our strokes like the letter A are still that same up curve, but S stroke and an up curve, so it would be a thin line. Regardless if it's thin or thick, you can add these embellishment strokes to them. And so here's an example. We're just adding an oval to the beginning of the stroke. So this could be an A, for example. Okay, there are a few ways. Again, I like to share some of my maybe breaking the rules. Some people may say this is not proper, but I've been doing it for years and I feel like if it looks good, it is a viable option. So let's say I'm going to do that letter A again, like I normally would. If your name is Anna or something like that, I would do this basic stroke like I typically would. And then, this was going in to the right. And then, horrors, I come back here and I will go in the opposite direction to add that flourish in. That just helps me because I am so used to doing that stroke and to have the consistency. And maybe I don't know how much of the space I want to fill in yet. So to come back later and add that in, I find to be beneficial for me. Okay, so A's are so fun. The other option here is with these S-curve strokes is we can come around, do a little horizontal stroke that tucks back in. You'll see an example of that here in the word pens. Here's our S-curve stroke. Has a little horizontal oval that lies right there on the baseline and comes down. I think that's really fun. I like it with R's as well. A little trickier with the B, but that is an option. So now let's look at these letters that have this kind of bowl top to it. So the P, B, and the R that has that bowl to it. So if our traditional B, as you can kind of see here in the gray, would just be like so. How do I add ovals to this? Well, you can just bump this out. And I would do this, I would actually start this one here. So this is not one where I would go back and add this stroke. I would do it in the order of do the S curve. And then I would come out here and do this all as one stroke together. Okay. I actually feel like I'd make that a little bit smaller. Now with our oval letters, shocker, we're just going to add more ovals. So here would be our basic structure for the C. You can come in here and tuck in a small oval on the outside, or you could tuck in an oval on the inside. This is what I do a lot for my own name. Coming around. Oh, look, here's an oval. We can keep going with that oval. Tuck it around like that. And that's actually kind of a fun little connection point when it comes in like that. I think it's a fun little, small little, change direction. Or we can go ovals to ovals. Here's that pelican mouth. Comes around. So we really are, you can just think about all the places that you can add the ovals. But again, we're still thinking about centering our strokes, crossing them at 90 degrees, not crossing in the same place. So those principles that we spoke about earlier and not having two thick lines cross one another are still at play. Then there's the flourish that I call the underswoop and the overswoop. So when I was talking earlier about the name Carrie, that would have been a place where I'd be very tempted to take that lower portion of the K and do what I call the underswoop. So it just means instead of normally an M would come out like that. If your name was Mike or something, that's where it would connect. But let's go back to Carrie with that K. So here we've got that upper loop. Here I could have taken this stroke down and used that as my embellishment point for her name. Okay, so it's that underswoop. The overswoop for letters like N, V, and W is exactly what it sounds like. Let's say we've got some Valerie's in the house. We do this portion regularly, and then instead of stopping here at the ascender line, you let that stroke come on up and have fun. You can either stop it there. Sometimes that looks like an antenna to me of insects, so we're not going to stop there. If you want, you can bring that around, you know, continue to embellish however you will. But the idea is that you're swooping over, keeping those figure 8 strokes in mind. Okay. All right. Thank you all again so much for joining me in this class. Thanks so much.